The magistrates, ministers, juries, and all the people in general, being so much enraged and incensed against us by the delusion of the devil, which we can term no other by reason we know in our own consciences, we are all innocent persons. These words were written by a man named John Proctor while he was imprisoned, waiting his hanging in the gallows. John Proctor was one casualty in the war on witchcraft that swept through Salem and the surrounding areas in 1692 in Massachusetts. All this chaos did not arise overnight. In fact, it arose when settlers came to North America from Europe, and each one bringing his or her own superstitions or beliefs, including that of witchcraft. That was one of the reasons that compelled Governor William Phips to create his own court of oyer and terminer that specialized in the ever-flowing accusations of witchcraft. But what really separated this court apart from most courts, other than its specialization, was the fact that it took into consideration spectral evidence, or otherwise known as the acts of ghosts. But what it means in this context is the appearance of the figure of someone's apparition in the dreams of the accusers. Although this may seem crazy in the current court of law, it was common in condemning witches in the old days. The fact that spectral evidence was used was the key fact in the Salem witch trials, considering it created nearly impossible conditions to be found innocent. Although the courts were a key factor in setting the stage for the Salem witch trials, what really started the surge of accusations were the beginnings of the illnesses between the Reverend Parris's daughter and niece, Betty Parris and Abigail Williams. People described this illness not as a normal illness, but one that scared the townspeople. In a town of only 500 people, news spread like wildfire. People said these two girls would crawl under furniture, stretch themselves into strange positions, and even create weird noises, and participated in many acts that a Puritan community would see as unfit for young ladies like them. The hysteria soon spread through several other girls, including Ann Putnam and Mary Warren. Although it is disputable what caused these fits of hysteria, the theories vary from the pressure of this perfectly uniform Puritan society, where difference is frowned upon, to the theory that their rye meal was infected with a fungus called ergot that displays many similar symptoms that the girls were going through, including delirium psychosis. But most think that the girls' imagination flew away after listening to the Parris' household slave, Tituba's stories of voodoo and magic from her homeland in Barbados, and the stories and legends of witchcraft from the book Malleus Maleficum. All of these fits worried the townspeople, and eventually the girls were taken to the town doctor, Dr. Griggs. He diagnosed them to be bewitched and suggested that they should hang the witches responsible. This one misdiagnosis caused much pain and suffering, but that was only the start of this delusion. As soon as this diagnosis came, the citizens of Salem begged these young girls to tell them who their tormentors were. And the first three accused were Sarah Good, Tituba, and Sarah Osborne. Nobody contradicted these accusations, because these people were basically exiled. Tituba was a colored slave who did not truly believe in Puritan ways, and had told the girls tales of voodoo and fortune-telling tricks. Sarah Good was a beggar who knocked door to door. This was frowned upon, and when she left, she often said things under her breath which people mistook as a curse, often blamed her for sickness and failure. While Sarah Osborne was a rich woman who rarely attended church and married her servant. And in Puritan laws, not attending church was illegal, and marrying a servant was barred. These people were natural scapegoats, and the jury were already biased to this and weighed the odds against these innocent people. But many specialists think that this may not have been the girls' faults, but the pressure put on them at the time by their society and by the economic situations and the lack of emotional outlets, such as toys and games, which were considered taboo. Things got worse as one of the women, Tituba the slave, confessed. Most think it was because her master, Reverend Paris, was enraged by her, as he had come to believe these afflicted girls, and scared her into confessing by beating her, until she admitted to the sin. Tituba herself had said, "The devil came to me and bid me to serve him." This affirmation put the town on edge, and accusations flew, with even more coming in every minute, and the court unjustly swayed to the townspeople every will and whim. This denied many rights. One of the accused, George Jacobs Sr., even declared at his examination, "Well, burn me or hang me, I will stand in the truth of Christ." These accusations continued until around 200 people were accused. All of this not only worried the townspeople, but hurt many of the people involved. Did you know that people think that up to 13 people died in jail awaiting their trials, including the infant daughter of Sarah Good? Do you know that people accused were hung, and they even executed 2 dogs that were deemed innocent immediately afterwards? The townspeople let down the rights that people need just to continue this brutal witch hunt. They wouldn't even let them be declared of their innocence. When they did pass a test that was mandated to prove their innocence, like in the case of George Burroughs, where he recited the Lord's Prayer flawlessly, without so much as a stumble. This was said to be unfeasible for a witch, yet he was still hung in cold blood. There were also other tests to conclude a witch. Some were cruel and unusual, like the witch cake. The witch cake was a cake made out of rye meal and urine of the afflicted, then baked into the ashes and fed to a dog that would attract the witch. Most of these tests were impossible to pass and were purposely leaned so that the person would be found guilty, no matter the circumstances. Like in the mark test, where the accused would be searched for a mark. It could have been anything, like a mole. Then they would poke the area, and if it didn't bleed, the accused was proven to be a witch. The experts think that the individuals performing the tests dulled the needle so that it wouldn't draw blood. These responsibilities entrusted upon the jury began to become questionable when good, uniformed Puritan citizens were accused of this awful sin, including a 5-year-old girl named Dorcas Good, who was accused by the afflicted girls with her mother. She was forced to watch her mother executed and was chained to a prison wall for month after month. And her father, William Good, wrote this in his petition for compensation. A child of 4 or 5 years old was imprisoned for 7 or 8 months, being chained in a dungeon, so hardly used and terrified. It didn't stop there. They even pressed an 80-year-old man to death named Giles Corey. Before he died, his last words of defiance still rang to the court that killed him. Some people view that as a turning point. That if they would press an old man to death for not admitting to what most thought was the worst sin that one could commit, what else would they do? People started to complain to the minister in increased Mather about how unfair these trials were, and how the courts were becoming corrupt with power. The minister was a wise man and started looking into these corruptions. He even claimed it would be better that 10 suspected witches may escape than one innocent person be condemned. He was surprised that after 4 years in England that all hell would break loose in Salem village. Only did it come to a stop when the governor's own wife was accused of this sin. Even after it ended, these people were still denied rights from their community, and their once polished reputations were forever tarnished. And though they were forgiven, it still wouldn't help the 20 people who died in vain for a cause that didn't exist. Although the afflicted played a large role, only one of the girls apologized and acknowledged this in 1706. Although some good did come from this malice and misfortune, these were to be some of the last witch trials in the United States, and made way for turning to not allow religion and suspicions into the government and law by showing the responsibilities of the court for upholding the rights of the people.